Here today, I'm just going to take you all through how to create an NPS score utilizing a pivot table in Excel. It's a really handy trick that you can use, which allows you to dynamically look at your NPS scores and slice and dice them by metadata that you have available to you as well. So in this raw data that I've set up here, you're able to see your NPS score in column D. And what we're going to try to do is transform this ultimately into ones and zeros, which will subsequently enable us to generate a pivot table report from the data. And we'll use that data to calculate what's known as a calculated field in the pivot table. So I'll take you through all of that in the next 5 to 10 minutes. So step number one here is just trying to transform your data into a manner that will enable you to calculate the calculated field. So I'll show you today what the formula is that we need to write for promoters and detractors here. So for promoters, we want to write that if the score is more than 8, i.e. a promoter, we'll flag that as a 1, else we'll flag it as a 0. And similarly for detractors, we will write that if the NPS score is less than 7, flag it as a 1, else flag it as a 0. Just for ease of use, false, it's not relevant for the formula we'll be writing today. I've also included here just a formula to show you how to write the same logic for a passive. It's slightly more complicated. It requires an if-and formula, but you can see it then. You can refer to the template after this if you need to as well. The final transformational calculation that we'll do is just to identify whether there is in fact an NPS score within column D. So this is really important. As you probably all will know, the NPS score is calculated as a percentage of promoters over minus the percentage of detractors, and this percentage will be skewed if your base result is incorrect. So it's integral that we do a check to ensure that the column that we're looking at is populated. So pretty much what we're writing here, if the NPS score is blank, flag it as blank. If not, we'll flag it as 1. And what that allows us to do, to make it even easier, I can put that as 0. What that allows us to do is to count the NPS score or acknowledge that there is in fact an NPS score in that column. So now that we've written our transformation formulas, a lot of ones and zeros, doesn't look too pretty, but it's effective. What we just need to do is drag that formula down into all of the cells below. As you can see, all the way down to cell 5002 or row 5002, these formulas have been dragged down. Now comes the fun bit. So we need to transform this data into a pivot table now. The way that we'll do this, I won't highlight the top row of data as it's a merged cell and a pivot table may not like it, but from row 2 and downwards, we have to highlight the respective data. And we have to insert a pivot table. So go to insert and hit pivot table. And we'll just create this on a new worksheet. Great, so now we've highlighted the respective data and we've got to the pivot table area. What we're going to need to do here is create a calculated field for this pivot table. So what I'm just going to do is just create a cell here to demonstrate the number of survey responses that we've done. And the reason why I do this is it allows us this box at the top here to pop up, known as fields, items, and sets. And what this function allows us to do is to create what's known as a calculated field in a pivot table. Now, what that ultimately is a formula within a pivot table. So similar to how we've transformed the data in the raw data tab, this field will give us the capability to write a formula within the pivot table, which pretty much merges a number of different fields into one calculated box for us. Probably make more sense when I explain it versus trying to talk you through it. So here we go. So if I could get you to hover over fields, items, and sets in Excel and click downwards, you'll see this option here to click on a calculated field. Now we have to name this field first and foremost, and so I'll just generally name it NPS score or something of that kind. And what we want to do here is write a formula which will enable us to calculate the NPS score attributed with each row of data that we have in our raw data. So as I touched on a couple of minutes ago, the NPS score is calculated as a percentage of promoters minus a percentage of detractors. And so what we have to write in this field here is a formula to mimic that. So getting our brackets right first and foremost, we want to insert the NPS promoter field, which was the field where we had all of the ones and zeros in. And we want to divide that by the NPS count field, which was the field we used to identify how many survey responses actually had an NPS score. Now, if you look at this calculation logically, what it's doing is it's counting all of the promoters divided by the total survey responses. And that's going to give us a percentage or a decimal for the percentage of promoters. Now, what we want to do is minus the percentage of detractors from that amount. So we will include the NPS detractors divided by the NPS count. We'll close both brackets. And then in order to get a percentage, we will have to times that by 100. Now, if I hit OK, you can see here that we have a lovely NPS score of minus 45, or maybe not so lovely, depending on who you are. Now, the benefits of creating the NPS score like this is that it's completely dynamic. So if we want to now split the NPS score by different variables, I'll just bring that down into the rows, we can see that there's a different NPS score by your metadata variable. If we want to look at this by a response month, I'll just bring that down here, take away the metadata variable, you can see that we've got an NPS score by response month. So by creating this calculated field, we've really enabled ourselves to be more dynamic with our analysis, to have an NPS score that can be easily analyzed, cut, sliced, and diced with other metadata variables that we have within our Excel sheet. Now, I know there's a lot of dashboards and stuff like that that can do this on behalf of someone like you, but I also know that some people don't have access to that dashboard or that capability. So this is a really cool hack in order for us to analyze NPS scores in a quick manner. So something I prepared before, just to give a little bit more indication of what you can do here. I've been able to split the results by year and by month, and you can also see the number of NPS responses associated with each score. I've been able to calculate the NPS results by different metadata variables, and there's a number of other ways that you can cut, slice, and dice this data if you prepare it in the correct manner. This tab that I'll include in the show notes as well also shows you how you can calculate rolling NPS scores where needed. Now, this is a little bit more rigid in terms of its approach, but it's a really handy tool for any of you to use, just in case you need to calculate NPS scores or CSAT scores on the run. So I hope that's been helpful. If there's any questions, shout out, email me, ben@beardedmanconsulting.com, and I'd be more than happy to assist in taking you on the NPS journey moving forward. Thanks.